And it's time for Lefties Losing It. And they've done it now. Daddy's mad. It's bad enough that the president has to deal with lefties losing it on networks like CNN and MSNBC. Networks pumping out lies, hysteria and hate 24/7. But the commander-in-chief was also fed up with an ally and a foe failing to live up to a peace deal. And they all copped it, starting with the lefty media outlets.
You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSNBC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean. I think CNN ought to apologize to the pilots of the B-2s. I think that MSNBC ought to apologize. I think these guys really, these networks and these cable networks are real losers. You really are. You're real losers.
You're real losers. Yes, you are. CNN and MSNBC, or was he calling them MSNBC? Well, frankly, he was just warming up.
You're gutless losers. I say that to CNN because I watch it. I have no choice. I got to watch that garbage. It's all garbage. It's all fake news. But I think CNN is a gutless group of people, and the people that run it, nobody even knows it's been sold so many times. But the people that run it ought to be ashamed. MSNBC, a guy named Brian Roberts, he heads it. He's a disgrace. He's a weak, pathetic disgrace.
Just fantastic stuff and well-deserved. I'll show you shortly what inspired that spray, but the president was not done yet. We're going to have a look at one of the greatest moments in Donald Trump's presidency thus far, a moment that will go down in history. And this moment is significant for a number of reasons. The substance of his comments, the manner in which it was delivered, and the confidence it inspired. This is a leader, not a politician.
Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Do you have to respond to Iran?
Outstanding, outstanding. And that sent a message. There was no forceful retaliation by Israel and none further by Iran for now. And folks from both sides of the political divide appreciated the honesty, the transparency of the moment. But not this blowhard. Let's hear from possibly the dumbest man on British radio, James O'Brien.
The aftermath of an attack upon nuclear facilities. And did my ears deceive me? I think what's clear is that Donald Trump doesn't know what the bleep is going on, right? Can we agree on that?
No, we can't agree on that, you contemptible simpleton. Just like we don't agree on this defamatory set of lies about the president, perhaps he will sue LBC like he did ABC. That cost ABC a pretty penny. Yes, it did. How much might this little rant cost James O'Brien's employer?
But as it is, it's the self-confessed sex offender who you're cheering for his attitude towards transgender women. It's a self-confessed sex offender, the guy who boasts about grabbing women by their genitals.
Did he say he grabbed them without their consent? Pretty sure he didn't say that, James. But let's get back to what had the president ropeable in the past 24 hours. And he was reporting like this. Here is CNN reporting as gospel info leaked to them by some desperate, hacked and anonymous low-level loser from the deep state. If I may quote the press secretary there.
essentially looking at the images and looking at what was actually damaged, the Defense Intelligence Agency has assessed that the core components of Iran's nuclear program are largely intact, and that Iran's nuclear program has essentially only been set back by months.
Sure, Jan, just months. Nuclear sites bombed to smithereens, just set back a few months. Here is how dishonest CNN can be, how their only objective is to damage Donald Trump. Let's have a look at this presenter, Erin Burnett, first claiming last week that there was no need to bomb Iran's nuclear sites because they were years away from developing a weapon, if indeed Iran even wanted a weapon.
This timeline of Iran being a few weeks away from a nuclear bomb is in direct contradiction to CNN's reporting. According to U.S. intelligence assessments, Iran is 3 years away from being able to produce a nuclear weapon if they wanted to. So the facts on Iran getting a nuclear weapon do not bear out the claim at the heart of what has put the world on the verge of world war.
World war, hyperbole much? Here is the same activist journalist less than a week later saying the American strikes only put back Iran's nuclear weapon ambitions by a matter of months.
Only set back the Iranian nuclear program by months. We got to call it like it is. It's a big deal.
Unbelievable. And here is CNN's Erin Burnett again claiming that those chanting death to America in Iran are actually really friendly. Well, perhaps they're friendly to her because she's the very definition of a useful idiot.
They're chanting death to America all around me, even as I say, oh, I'm an American reporting for CNN, and they were happy to speak to me. So that those two is sort of jarring realities of the chant, and yet the friendliness have existed together.
No wonder Donald Trump gave the media outlets another big serve earlier today during this press conference at The Hague.
You have some great reporters, but you have scum. CNN is scum. MSDNC is scum. The New York Times is scum. They're bad people. They're sick. And what they've done is they're trying to make this unbelievable victory into something less.
And we will be crossing to the NATO summit shortly to hear from President Trump. That press conference has been delayed because the president is having a private meeting with the Ukrainian leader, President Zelensky. And as soon as that press conference is underway, we will be crossing live to it. But joining me now is the president of the Center of the American Experiment, John Hinderaker. John, you don't hear straight talk like that from a politician too often. What was your reaction when you heard that raw commentary on Iran and Israel breaking the ceasefire deal?
Rita, we've all gotten used to this. There's never been a president in our history and very few political leaders who talk like that, but we're used to it now and it doesn't shock us anymore. And frankly, it's hard not to agree with the substance of what Trump said. He's done a wonderful job here. He's devastated Iran's nuclear program, which was a serious threat to us as well as to Israel and others. He's brought about a ceasefire now between Israel and Iran, and the left can't stand it. You know, they hate success, and so this is what Trump gets so irate about.
And what do you make of the claims that these strikes did little to hurt Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons? Do you put any credibility to those claims?
None. Rita, a big problem we have in American government is that when we have a Republican president, Democrats in the bureaucracy will continually leak things that they think are damaging to the president. Now, they might be true, they might be completely false, but the media treats it like gospel, you know, because it's a leak, that means it must be true. And that's what's going on here. Somebody somewhere in the Intelligence Committee leaked a claim that, well, maybe there wasn't so much damage after all, but we really don't know. Rita, I think it's blindingly obvious. You drop those bunker-busting bombs, you drop 30 Tomahawk missiles on Iran. We've all seen the photographs of what these areas look like. The damage that was done was absolutely enormous. And I think Trump is right to be angry at these news outlets and this leaker on behalf of the pilots and the military people who carried out the attack.
And he really does seem to be genuinely angry about this one. I mean, he has all sorts of lies and hysteria and hyperbole said about his administration on a daily basis, but I've seldom seen him, John, take something so personally, and so personally on behalf of those involved in this operation.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Rita. I would add one more thing. You know, some of the Democrats in Congress are complaining that Trump didn't give them any advance notice about the attack. Well, why didn't you tell Congress beforehand? Well, the answer is if he had done that, the Democrats in Congress would have leaked it. They would have destroyed the secrecy of the attack. That's the state of politics in America, Rita.
Well, yeah, the element of surprise would have been lost, but I have no doubt that some Democrats would have leaked it. Now, we've seen Joe Biden's National Secretary Council Coordinator for the Middle East, Brett McGurk, praise the president's decisive action against Iran, but there hasn't been any such praise from Biden's Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. He's condemned the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. He wrote a piece for the New York Times, and he said the strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities by the United States was unwise and unnecessary. What do you make of that criticism, John? Blinken is not happy with the president for tearing up the nuclear deal with Iran.
Well, Anthony Blinken is a hardcore Democratic Party partisan. He's the guy who organized the 51 former intelligence officials, commonly referred to as the Dirty 51, to lie about Hunter Biden's laptop and the information it contained about Joe Biden. They knew it was genuine, but to help Joe Biden get elected, they organized this effort to lie about it, and Anthony Blinken is the #1 guy who did that. So nothing that he says should be taken seriously. You know, that Obama plan, I think almost everyone agrees now it was a joke. He gave Iran billions of dollars. They signed a piece of paper and they kept on working on enriching uranium. The UN agency said over and over again, they're cheating, they're not disclosing, that the Obama joint plan of action was a fiasco. And I think almost everyone realizes that.
Now, let's have a look at some polling on how Americans feel about this issue, about how they feel on Iran having nuclear weapons. Let's listen to CNN's polling expert, Harry Enton.
There's more support for Donald Trump's positions than is comically acknowledged. Oppose Iran getting a nuclear weapon. I mean, look at this. 79% of adults agree on that. They agree with Donald Trump. Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. 83% of Republicans, 79% of independents, 79% of Democrats. When you get 79% of Democrats and 83% of Republicans agreeing on anything, you know that that position is the very clear majority in this country.
Wow, that is surprising that you've got almost identical numbers across the board. That rarely happens on any issue, John.
It almost never happens, Rita. We're so divided in America. But what it shows is that people realize this is a major national security issue. We don't want to get hit with a nuclear bomb by Iran. And I mean, there's not a big minority on that issue. I've seen other polling, Rita, that people who identify themselves as MAGA Republicans, which is Trump's real base, over 90% support the action that he's taken here in Iran. The idea that there's a big division in the American people over this, it just isn't true.
Now, as for the strikes against Iran, we do know there are many Republicans unhappy about the US's involvement, but though they are loud and some of them are very influential, they are a minority in the Republican Party.
There's this idea, okay, maybe the MAGA base wouldn't necessarily like this. Look, this is Donald Trump's Republican Party. That's what I think is so important to note. GOP on the U.S. airstrikes in Iran, 76% in the average of the two polls approve, compared to just 18% who disapprove. Now, I will note that is a bit higher than Donald Trump's disapproval rating within the Republican Party. But overall, Republicans are with Donald Trump on this.
John, Harry is right there. This is now Donald Trump's Republican Party, and the base will go with him, even if they're a little bit uncomfortable about the direction he's veering.
Rita, as long as things go well, he's not going to lose any of that support. I don't think there's any prospect of U.S. ground troops in Iran. I don't think there's any prospect of this somehow going bad, sort of like Iraq did in 2006. And as long as things continue to go well, he's going to have overwhelming support from the American people, and especially overwhelming support from the Republican Party.
How is he going domestically? We have spent so much time looking at how he's performing in foreign affairs, but on those core issues that he won the election on, there were the culture war issues, there was the immigration crisis and inflation. Is he on top of those issues?
I think he is, Rita. Number one, he pledged to close the border. The Democrats said, oh, no, it can't be done. Well, he closed the border in a matter of weeks. Illegal immigration has stopped. I mean, it's come to virtually zero, and now they're carrying out deportations, starting with the most dangerous criminal illegal aliens. He's got broad support for those actions throughout the American public. I think one thing that's important to keep our eye on is the so-called big, beautiful bill, this massive spending bill that extends the tax cuts from Trump's first term that otherwise are going to expire at the end of the year. That has passed the House. It's working its way through the Senate in slightly different form. We're told the Senate is probably going to pass it by July 4th. And if they do and it gets signed into law, this is going to be the big win domestically of Donald Trump's first year.
John Heinderecker, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time tonight.